I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Wurundjeri Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
Cider has a long heritage in Australia. Cider was on the first fleet that came to Australia. Tasmania had a long history of making cider, and then unfortunately during the 80s and the 90s, it also moved into this very mass-produced cider and typically very sweet. And the big breweries have a huge dominance in the market, and they don't do much with it.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Nick Geoghegan is the owner of Small Acres Cyder in Orange, New South Wales. After moving to the region for a tree change, he and his wife Jannene took a chance on a small cider business, and I'm really looking forward to hearing their story. Hi Nick, thanks for joining me.
Hi Shanteh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's a thrill. We have been meaning to do this for quite some time, and of course we've decided to do it in November when we've got nothing else to do, but I'm so glad that you've got a little bit of time to chat to me. Now tell me a little bit about where your beautiful accent's from.
I'm Irish, so I grew up in Dublin, just on the coast of Dublin in Dalkey, and moved to Australia about a bit over 30 years ago. Yeah, just met my wife in London, and I thought I'd come over for a little working holiday, and here we are. So, yeah, a few years later, 3 kids born, all through school now, so yeah.
Wow, you're entering a very new era. That's amazing. I'm sure, it's not the end of problems and issues and complications, but it certainly is the end of the era when they've made it through school. Tell me a little bit about, before you even got here to Australia, tell me a little bit about, you had a background in marketing, is that right?
Yeah, look, I did my original first degree in marketing, in international marketing, and I went on a graduate program to London, working for Guinness Brewing, or Guinness PLC, which was Guinness Brewing when I started, and then I moved into United Distillers. So I sort of very early on was in the drinks industry, and obviously, what's now Diageo is a colossal business. And in London there, they had the Park Royal Brewery had been there. It's gone now, but it had been there for, 80 years or something. And Guinness Brewing has so much history and a massive business. But yeah, so we'd, lived I was over in London. I met Jannene and came over here for that bit. So yeah. But yeah, born and bred Dublin.
Amazing. And worked for Guinness. I mean, what a cliche, it's fabulous. But tell me, what were your first thoughts when you got to Australia? What did you think about us weird Aussies and our strange climate?
Look, I think culturally, Ireland is very similar to Australia. And I think socially, it's a little, there are definitely differences. I guess the whole cultural process in Ireland, a lot of it is around the pub and around hospitality and everything. And it's a little different here. Weather-wise, obviously really different. So a sort of a dull winter Sunday in Sydney is pretty much a good Irish summer's day. So look, I loved it. We did go back for a few years in 2007, and it sort of got it out of my system. Like, I love Ireland and I love visiting there. And there's, culturally, there's a lot of great things about Ireland. But I think we're very lucky with the lifestyle we have in Australia. And, I guess the only thing we still miss here is we're a bit remote from the rest of the world. But otherwise, I love the outdoor lifestyle and I love being out and about. And living in Orange, it's a bit closer to the Irish climate in the sense of you have, 4 proper seasons, and it's, at the moment anyway, still very green. So, it's a smaller town. Like, the decision to move to Orange was a really good one. We had enough of Sydney, really, of the traffic and the driving around, and we knew Orange well from friends. And it was just, let's give it a go. And 7 years now we've been in Orange. 5 of those looking after Small Acres.
Incredible. Now, tell me a little bit about, in the UK, tell me a little bit about kind of cider consumption. Is it something that everybody drinks? Because and what about Ireland? Does everyone drink cider back there?
Yeah, the interesting thing is, so the UK, France, and Spain are the 3 sort of big original cider producing countries, and they have huge heritage and very distinctive ciders. The US would be one of the biggest ones these days in terms of consumption, but in Ireland, the per capita consumption of cider is the highest in the world. And almost all of it is Magners, sadly. I mean, Magners is fine as a mass-produced cider, but it's only in the last few years that sort of craft cider has really re-emerged in Ireland. There's wonderful history of cider in Ireland, and there's, I found a Irish-German cider maker did a lot of research on the homework and history of cider in Ireland, and there's wonderful books from like the 1700s which were advising people how to make cider at home and all the skills and everything involved in it. So Ireland has a lot of cider consumption. Most of it is pretty, ordinary cider, but it's definitely re-emerging. And they've got everything else they need. They've got the apples. They've got the climate for growing apples for sure. And, it's on one of those beautiful, rare summer's days in Ireland, there's nothing better than sitting out with a pint of cider and having a gas bag.
I think cider is a wonderful drink, and I particularly think that Australia makes some wonderful cider. Now, my history in craft cider has usually been from Tassie, but then coming across your cider, I was absolutely blown away, super impressed. And, as a young som, it truly, you've got a wonderful range. But as a young som, I used to, talking 10 years ago, you used to kind of talk about Orange and you'd say, Orange, no, it's in New South Wales. They're actually known for their apple production more than oranges, which I always just thought was a quirky little note. Whereas today, people know Orange for itself. They know it for great wine production, and now they're going to know it for great cider production. Tell me a little bit about how Small Acres came to be your business.
Yeah, so Small Acres was started 18 years ago. So James Kendall was a real pioneer in the craft cider industry in Australia, and together with David Pickering, who is a wonderful cider, advocate and grower, cider apple grower, and unfortunately passed away, it's about a year and a half ago now. But they really did a lot to sort of introduce craft cider to Australia. Here, James established a craft cider orchard, so English and French apple varieties, and had the cellar door, and really sort of pioneered things along with David and a few others like the Australian Cider Awards, the Cider Association. So there's a huge legacy here. When we moved to Orange, we were cider lovers from the start, and having met my wife in London and, enjoyed cider there, and we moved to Australia, and it really wasn't until we started visiting Orange that we actually found great cider, and it was Small Acres, and so we loved it. When we moved up here, we were just regular getters, but we noticed it was getting harder and harder to find. And then so what was going on? It was COVID, and the Kendalls were moving back to the UK basically to be with their family, and they were looking to sell the business, and we were. We had so much free time on our hands with COVID. And we thought, we can definitely do this. We can rescue our favorite cider brand. And we took it on. So we had a very short handover with James. He, at the time, he had to apply for permission to leave the country. If I don't know if you remember that part of COVID. So you couldn't even just leave. And so that all sort of happened in a bit of a rush. So we had a couple of weeks of handover. And next minute, here we are. We've got a cellar door, and we've got literally 2 ciders left. And we are running around bottle shops trying to buy back some of the back catalogue. Yeah, so that at least we'd have something here. Like, it was it was a challenging time because of COVID anyway, but we wanted to keep the cellar door open and keep people interested and not turn people away. So, yeah, it was a bit of a wild ride. And then for a while, we only had 2 ciders in the cellar door, which one was the Pommeau, which you have, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. It's delicious cider, and it is... Yeah, but it's a fortified cider. It's nothing like what people expect. And then we have the Cas Pajamas, which is a wild fermented cider, and it's bold and Brett and dry. And again, it was, a wild time. We had to cook food for every day to serve with the Cas Pajamas, because otherwise very few people could take it because it was just too much. And then, we started making cider and bringing it back in. And now it's obviously we're a long way along. We've got, more than a dozen different ciders, and so half of them are ones that we've introduced since, and half of the sort of the ciders that the Kendalls have been making all along. It was a bit of a wild ride. I mean, COVID, you look back on those times, you think, what on earth was going on? We learned a heap in that time. And I think we also discovered there's lots of people who are big, fans of Small Acres, and they sort of lost touch over the years. We recently started doing North City markets again, and we have all these people who just come up and go, "Oh my goodness, you're back!" And that's wonderful. Cool. Like it's a great feeling. And then when they come back because they've had some and they want some more, that's the power. Yeah.
So cool. I mean, I think, a relationship to a brand, like you said, they've had it before, they had a wonderful experience, then they rediscover it. That's really says a lot because they've remembered that brand. But the first cider I had from you guys was your sparkling, kind of your estate cider, and then which is beautiful and beautifully dry and crisp and crunchy. There's so much purity of fruit there, but it's a very elegant drink. And then I've also had your Kingston Black, which I am such a fan of. The boldness of flavor, but the beautiful acidity that just kind of carries that. Really sensational drinks. And I'm a really big advocate for cider throughout all meals. It is one of the easiest to pair drinks on the planet, with savory courses, with cheese, with appetizers. You can have cider with everything.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And look, I think the acidity of it, and, in some cases, the tannins, they go great with food. It's a really good food match. And, it's got that cut through. And not every cider goes with every meal. And that's why we have such a range of ciders. We've got a Perry, which is a very delicate champagne method drink. And you'd have that, on its own, maybe with something really light, right through to the Cas Pajamas, which is so bold, and it's got acidity, it's got tannin, and I think that's, and a lot of people don't realize about cider is that, the average cider that you'll get in a pub, etc. Well, it's probably made from apple juice concentrate rather than fresh apples, but it's generally at the very start of the process in China or South Africa, wherever the apples were grown, they're just plain eating apples, and they've been boiled down and shipped around the world as concentrate and very industrially produced, which is completely different to what we're doing here, which is using fresh local apples and using apples which are made for drinking rather than for eating. They're cider varieties from the UK and France, and so tannin, unlike grapes, is in the actual body of the apple, but only in those apples which are made for cider. Because if you're eating an apple and it's full of tannin, it's a bitterness that most people are not keen on. We in the orchard here, we have these amazing, particularly English varieties like the Kingston Black, which have that tannin content. They're called bitters or bitter sharps or bitter sweets, and they just give you a bit more body to the cider. They give that lovely freshness at the front of your mouth, and just also helps the cider develop and mature over time. So, those ciders you can keep them in the bottle for years. We've had Cas Pajamas, which I think we found one from 90. Anyway, it was about 10 years old, and it was fantastic. Like, it was really good. And you can't do that with a cider that's just made with, your Golden Delicious or Pink Ladies. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's what's really interesting for us is bringing out the character of those amazing cider apples, and the character. We have a Pink Lady cider, which is a single variety, and it's not a cider apple as such, but it has great acidity, and there's a lovely honeyed sweetness, and we make that as a sweet cider, and it's lovely and refreshing. So there's just so much in apples, and we're not a lot of the industry has gone towards the sort of fruity ciders and adding lots of adjuncts, lots of sort of novelty ingredients. I think in the US it's the extreme. They're doing like banana jalapeno ciders and things. And I think that's exciting and interesting if that's what you want to do. But for us, we think there's just so much more to be had just from the apple and from the pear, and exploring, the qualities of the fruit, but also how we can transform that and how we can make it something special in the glass.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And you have planted quite a few more trees since you've been at Small Acres. Tell me a little bit about what are the kind of varieties you're putting into the ground? What's doing really well that you want to see a bit more of work with?
Yeah, so we planted about 300 more trees. We sort of, since we took over, we've had to reinvigorate the orchard a little bit, because it hadn't had a lot of focus. So we sort of filled in all the gaps, and then about 2 years ago we grafted around 300 trees, and then we had a grower in Batlow sort of grow them initially, and then we planted them, and we've trellised them this year. So it's a whole program to sort of get these up and running, and it's a long-term thing. It'll take 5 years before we're getting good fruit off them. But so we've got three. We've got a Cimetière de Boulangie, which is a bitter sweet French variety. We've got the Yarrington Mill. So the Yarrington Mill is a sort of legendary English variety. And the third is the it's a russet. It's going to kill me now. I'll remember it in a minute. But an English russet apple. So we wanted to sort of, we have 18 different varieties in the main orchard, and we wanted to sort of expand, but not necessarily have another 18. We could grow more of what we know grows well in our orchard. So it's still early days. If you see them, they're just scrawny little trees, and we're giving them a bit of love. And luckily, we've had some great rain here in the last few weeks in Orange, so everything looks extremely green, and the grass has gone whoosh. So we're doing lots of slashing. But yeah, that's a big thing. Look, we have other growers we work with, and our Femme Fatale, for example, is made with a Red Moon apple, which we get from a grower in Batlow. So I don't know if you've got one. Yeah, that's it. Here we go. The Red Moon is it's a red-fleshed apple, so it's a true rosé cider. We're not adding grapes or berries or colouring, which is, the normal approach to that. It's actually made, those have been the Red Moon apples. And so they're red all the way through. And so that gives you, obviously, the fantastic colour, sort of rose gold colour. But also they'll have this lovely sort of berry tone, sort of raspberry, blueberry tone, all from the apples. And, there's so much to be done with apples. We don't need to throw a whole lot of novelty stuff in there. I'm not saying we'll never do a fruit cider, but it's got to be one that makes sense and is sort of more. We're playing around with a bit of quince. We might do something with quince because quince it's a plum fruit, grows here in Orange. It's a natural thing you might add.
I think, for the growth of the brand, just, starting with that messaging of, we're serious about our cider. We have all these incredible varieties. We're doing everything in-house is just a wonderful message. And it is really serious drink. I mean, the complexity of your ciders, you can be writing notes for days. It's just truly such a joy to drink. And we mentioned that Pomo, and Pomo, I think, is such a category that we just don't drink enough of, but is just fascinating. And for me, this is something that I would love to, bring out at Christmas towards the end of the day when we're having some different cheeses and things. That is truly, I mean, you've already can see the medals on there, but you have won some incredible awards. But the awards that you have won for your ciders, they really range in from Australian, shows all the way to Japanese shows. You're doing very well in lots of different spaces. Where do you find? Are you exporting a lot? Where are your ciders going?
Yeah, no, we are much more modest than that. Look, we have been trying to get into Japan as a market, and we've got some great connections there. I think they had a bit of a battering during COVID, is sort of what's happened there with the importers. So we'd love to, but not. We're really 99% of our business is around the central west of New South Wales. It's Orange, Bathurst, Dubbo, Canandra, a little bit in Blue Mountains and Lithgow. We have a few lovely customers in Sydney, and with the Barara Waters Inn is a wonderful place to have a meal, and you can finish your meal with a bit of our Pomo, in fact, as one of the matches things. So we've been in Sixpenny for quite a while, and where our real driver is the Central West, and we do Northside markets in Sydney, but we kind of not getting too ambitious, and there's a lot more to be done. There's a lot of people, I'm amazed. We've been here in Orange for 18 years as a brand, and we still have people going, oh no, I've never actually been out to your place, or no, I didn't know you're in Orange.
Yeah. I mean, when you were saying that, I was like, Sydney needs to be a huge market for you guys. Like Soms, I don't know what you're doing, but you need to be looking at these kind of products, 3 hours from Sydney, totally beautiful local produce. I mean, yeah, and these are the kind of ciders that do particularly well in restaurants because they're so versatile and so complex. So really fine restaurants that can use things like Coravan systems as well. They're sparkling systems to maybe pour them slowly. I mean, but most of your ciders are a 7.5%, 7-ish%. But when they're served in these larger bottles, I think what a wonderful opportunity to be able to pour by the glass or something like that. But tell me, in regards to aging ciders and your climate as well out there, I know that Batlow's had some really challenging times with some of their fruit trees not fruiting. What are some of the challenges for orange and for apple trees out where you are? Frost?
Yeah, look, we're very lucky in Orange because we have a long, hard winter, which is not great for us humans. But for the apples, when I say hard, there's a lot of cool nights and there's a lot of, a frost overnight. But from apples' point of view, that's a great chance for them to sort of recover and for any disease issues to be knocked back. It does result in apples which are generally a little bit higher in acidity. It's a bit like our grapes here. They are fantastic for Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, etc. Big, bold reds is not what orange is really about. And it's the same with our cider. We tend to have these sort of crisper ciders, and we like that style, so we'll stick with it. But otherwise, yeah, so Bill Pitt, I think they had some issues this year with pollination. I think they may think it's related to Varroa. I've heard other people saying that growers here have had issues, but the apple growers I'm talking to haven't. We're on an off year in our orchard, so it's a very biennial fruit for us because we don't use a lot of chemical thinning or any of those sort of industrial processes with the apples. So we have really big years and really small years. This year it's going to be a small year, and I can see that on the trees. But otherwise, it's been really good. The things that get us, the birds sometimes can be, pretty hard on the apples, and we don't net. And we just kind of go, well, that's, if the birds get 15% of the apples, which is what they say, well, that's, good on the birds, and it saves us having to play around with nets every year. We've had good rain this year, so that's been great for us. So I think it's going to be a cracking year. And the cherries, they're the first fruit to go out in Orange, and they're having a cracking year. I've had a few bits of hail and stuff recently, but apparently it hasn't hit them too bad, or most of them anyway. So I'm feeling very positive about Orange as a place. And look, the climate forecast is that Orange will get wetter. It'll get warmer in the long run, but it'll get wetter, and so that's a good thing for us, for growing. I think it's probably one of the best places in Australia to grow apples. So we're kind of lucky. We didn't realize when we took the business on how lucky we were with the orchard that we have and with the location we have, and having a cellar door, because lots of the smaller producers like us are not in a place with a lot of cellar doors. In Buffalo, their Apple Thief produced a fantastic new cellar door, and it's wonderful, and it's it would match up to any of the fancy cellar doors which have been built in Orange recently, but they don't have 30 wineries surrounding them, which we have here. And so we're very lucky that we people come to Orange and they may not be looking for cider, they're looking for wine, but they'll after so much Pinot Noir or Chardonnay, they'll be looking for something a bit different, and they come in and they kind of generally surprise. So I think Orange is one of the best places we could be.
Nick, we do have two hands for a reason, right? And you're Irish, so I'm sure you understand that. You can always have a glass of wine and then a cider in the other hand at all times. So I don't really see the issue.
And they do go well, and you can start your meal, with a refreshing bubbly cider, the carbonation, the freshness of it, or one of our, the Perry, which is just so light and delicate, as an alternative to white wine, and then get into the wine later on. And they're generally, the great thing about cider is it's generally naturally lighter in alcohol than a wine. So we don't have to, go to the trouble of reducing the alcohol content. It's just naturally a lower alcohol thing. So you can have a few glasses, and you can have a glass of cider, you can have a glass of a wine, and you're still in good form, and you can share a bottle between two of you, and over a period of time, you can still drive home. So I think it's a great drink.
It's such a great drink, and I think that in Australia, being that we haven't been huge cider drinkers, but I think that we did suffer from maybe about 5 years ago. Some of the ciders on the market were particularly sweet, and people really getting into them from newer, younger generations getting into it, but then feeling a little ill. But when you look at your ranges of cider, like you said, lowerish alcohol, a lot less sugar than any of those kind of things. So I really encourage people to reimagine what you think cider is all about, and try some of these ciders, because they are just sensational drinks. They really are. And like you said, you can have them all throughout a meal.
Cider has a long heritage in Australia. Cider was on the first fleet that came to Australia. And then, places like Tasmania had a long history of making cider. And then, unfortunately, during the 80s and the 90s, it also moved into this very mass-produced cider, and typically very sweet. And the big breweries have a huge dominance in the market, and they don't do much with it. Sadly, like I can understand, it's good to have big guys out there, but they do very little to promote cider. So it doesn't sort of help the fact that a lot of people do drink cider. Most of the time, the only thing they've ever had is those very sweet industrial ciders. And so we have a big job to convince people. And sadly, I mean, from a sommelier point of view, there's a lot of education that we need to do as a craft cider industry. And we're looking at a Pommelier, trying to bring some of the Pommelier qualifications to Australia to really help people to understand cider, because you can go into a really good restaurant in Sydney and they will have amazing wines, they'll have some top craft beers, and then they'll have they'll just have a one of those mass produced ciders. I was up at my son decided we should go to the casino, the Crown Casino in Sydney. We were up in that top restaurant up the top, and they had they're selling $30 cocktails and top end wines and $600 bottles of champagne. And the only cider they had on the menu was a pure blonde, low carb cider. And I fully support trying to track down low carb versions of anything, but I just think if you're a cider drinker and you really enjoy cider, that's not the best representation, and it's not the biggest opportunity either. They could have had some really fantastic ciders.
Yes, and I believe that chef is from the UK, so you would think that they'd have better taste. Not that that's a person buying it, but no, I completely agree with you. There is no excuse for any decent restaurant that hasn't given some good consideration to the cider they offer. I don't give anybody excuses. And I totally agree with you. We've got some beautiful products, and case in point. Tell me a little bit about the cellar door. What's the kind of experience people can expect? Because I really feel that going to a kind of cider orchard, apple orchard, is one of the most thrilling, wholesome things that you can ever do. And talking about a local experience in a region is just, you've got to get out there. If you go to Orange, you really have to come there. So what can people expect if they come and visit you?
Yeah, so our cellar door is right in the middle of the sort of the wine loop. So there's two roads on the Mount Canova side of Orange. There's Cargo Road and there's Escort Way, and you can do this fantastic loop which goes around, which takes in Heifer Station, Ross Hill. You can just do this wonderful loop, and we're sort of right in the middle of it. So we're in a great location. I'm looking out the window right now, and we've just got, can I do this? The people who are on the video, we've just got this wonderful greenery, the dams. We're looking down the valley. There's cherry orchards just next door, and so it's a beautiful location. Our cellar door is a small cellar door. We seat about 30 people inside, and then we've done a bit of work on the outside area, so we've got about seating for about 40 people outside, and we've started doing sort of food weekends. So we just do basic hot pies and cheese plates and stuff on our own, but we've started bringing in some food trucks, wonderful cage kitchen Malaysian food from Orange. The Romanian Delights do wonderful crepes. So yeah, it's in the cellar door, then we have a couple of options. People can do the classic tasting, which are sort of most popular ciders, and they're in those small format bottles like our Heritage or Palm or Flower, and they're sort of the most popular ones. And if you're kind of a regular everyday cider drinker, that's a great sort of entry point into our ciders. And then we have vintage tasting, which is focused on the more sort of adventurous ciders, and they tend to be drier, but not all super dry, so mentioned the Cat's Pajamas. We have our Femme Fatale, which is the rosé, and so we'll take our people through a selection of those ciders and give them a really broad experience of cider. And most people who come in here have really never had anything but the sweet sort of industrial stuff on the tap in the pub. And so we generally get, give people really a good experience. And we're very happy with the amount of 5-star reviews we get out of that. And on a sunny day, everyone sits outside and admires the view and has a cider and tastes some cider. And it's, a great way to spend an afternoon in Orange. And we are right in the middle of things. So you can, from here, you're about 7 minutes to the caves. There's Bornor Caves. Not many people know Bornor Caves. We've got Lake Canobolas, which is just a lovely lake, perfect place to walk around. There's Mount Canobolas, which is the mountain. And then we have all the wineries in the town, etc. So I think as a place to visit, there's a lot more to Orange than just the great wine, cider and food. I would encourage people to sort of take that extra, hour's drive to come here. If they're in Sydney, for example, it's very different to the Hunter Valley, for example. I think the Hunter, we used to go there when we were in Sydney and I used to love it for different reasons, but there's a lot more to do other than just drinking wine in Orange and obviously cider.
That's right. 100%. That walk around the lake is delightful, but there is so much happening in Orange and there's so much soul and character to the place and the community that make it. So such a beautiful part of the world. Nick, I do want to know, if you could only drink 3 drinks for the rest of your life, what would they be?
Okay, so I'm going to call out one first of my own because I just feel the cat's pajamas.
Good.
It is a wild fermented cider, and the reason it's great to drink for the rest of your life is because every year is very different. So, it very much depends on the blend of apples that we're getting off the orchard. Depends on the wild ferment, how that went. We barrel mature the cider. So this was 2 years in barrel. So that gives it this lovely creamy notes and sort of the caramelly sort of underlying flavor to it. It's really bold, and it's your winemakers will pick up a bit of Brett for sure, but it's a lovely drink. So that's certainly one.
It's part of the wine though. It's part of the drink. Brett has a place in cider, and as it does in beer as well. So totally about it, embracing what the drink's all about.
Yeah. I think too much is too much, but it's just got a nice bit of that. Number 2 would be Dalesford Cider's Kingston Black. So we make a Kingston Black Dalesford Cider. I love those guys. We're at Batlow Cider Festival beside them every year, and we always do a few good trades. They smashed it in the last Australian Cider Awards, so they had best cider and well deserved. And they're like us. They're a small family business, and they have a cellar door, and partly I like them as people, but the cider's lovely. And so the Kingston Black it's a bitter, sharp apple, so it's got tannin, it's got acidity, it's got these lovely floral notes, and they make a really good one. So that would be my number 2. And then number 3, I can't go past a pint of Guinness, and that's not just because of my professional history. I did work on one of the first Perfect Pint programs when I was at Guinness Brewing, and that was a lot of fun teaching at the time German pub owners how to produce and store a perfect pint of Guinness. Ideally, I'd like to have that pint of Guinness in an Irish pub, surrounded by friends and enjoying it in the full conviviality. But I'd certainly settle for the back of our house in Orange, sitting down and enjoying a nice cold Guinness. So, yeah, and Guinness is, it's become a hugely popular drink in the UK and the US. It's just having its moment kind of right now. But it's just always been a part of Irish life, and it's just a great drink.
It's a remarkable, remarkable drink. There is nothing quite like it on the earth. I'm all with you on this one. There is not a documentary. There's a show out at the moment people watching, but it's not factually based. So I'm really looking forward to a documentary based around Guinness. That would be really cool. But 3 excellent drinks. Tells me a little bit about your palate, Nick, and I could get on board with having those drinks anytime. It has been such a joy having you. I think the range is sensational. Like, I encourage anyone listening to this, go out and explore cider, let it change you, because it is a beautiful drink. Get to Small Acres, support them, and thank you for your time today. It's been a joy.
Thanks, Shanteh. It's been wonderful. And thanks for all the work you do as well. It's like a great podcast. I love listening to them. You're really educational and you got some great guests on. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Thank you again. Let's chat again. If you ever want any reviews on your cider, I would be thrilled to do them, because I can wax lyrical all day long writing notes on your ciders. So thank you again. I really appreciate it. And thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram at overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.